Well, ladies and gentlemen, we are back ranking every single Call of Duty Zombies perk after almost 2 years, and we also have the inclusion of the new Black Ops 6 perks being Melee Macchiato and the new variation of Vulture Aid. So ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, let's get straight into this. We also are including the B04 perks, but let's start it off with the OGs. Now, let's just get straight into it. Honestly, let's just pull up Quicker Vibe, Juggernog, Speed Cola, and then obviously the original Double Tap 1.0. Now, I think my opinion has definitely changed about these perks over time. I think obviously, like, you still think that Double Tap is one of the worst perks, but to be quite honest, I don't think it's an F tier perk. I really only think there's one F tier perk in this whole entire list. Actually, no, I think there's two, but I do believe one of them is still the original variation of Deadshot Daiquiri. I think that perk is just so bad. It does practically nothing for solo, does nothing for co-op either. It does nothing for PC either. It's mainly only for console. So if you're ever running this perk, it just has no point. It's a massive waste of a perk slot, and I would rather just get it as something as an additional 5th perk or whatever. So definitely not that great. It helps with headshots, but even in the older games, that doesn't really make much of a difference. I think I am gonna stick with leaving Double Tap 1.0 in C tier because there are times where I do believe it actually can be very helpful to have, and so that's why, like, I used to actually have Double Tap 1.0 in the F tier, but to be quite honest, I think it does do a lot more than the original Deadshot. Like, sure, it doesn't give you 2 bullets per 1 bullet like Double Tap 2.0 here, but it does still help you take out the zombies even that much slightly faster. So let's get into the 3 perks. Obviously, I think I'm going to still stick with my original placement for Quicker Vibe. It's an S tier. It has to be in the S tier. It's one of the best perks. You need it to literally have a 2nd, 3rd, and 4th chance in the OG Call of Duty Zombies. It helps you pick up your friends faster. I mean, what could be better than that? And obviously, the original Juggernog is an SS tier perk. It's just so amazing. It literally is what allows people to get to those higher rounds. And I do think that Juggernog over the years has definitely gotten a lot less useful. Even in Black Ops 6, I find it's not as good, especially with the newer variation of the Cold War Quicker Vibe. But for Speed Cola, I think I'm also gonna have to put this in the S tier as well, above Quicker Vibe, because Speed Cola, without it, you literally can't do so many of the high round strategies in Call of Duty Zombies. It is a must-have perk to run. And so now let's get more into the Black Ops 2 perks, since we've now finished the World at War and the Black Ops 1 perks, I guess, other than Stamina Up and PhD. So let's do that, and Double Tap 2.0. So, and Mule Kick. I'm forgetting them all out here. So, Stamina Up, honestly, I used to think that this perk was not really that great. But over speedruns and watching a bunch of speedruns, it is the only perk you need. And honestly, in my opinion, in my last tier list, I actually placed it in the A tier. I'm going to put it up in the double S tier now, because it is literally the best perk you could run if you're doing speedrunnings. It's so important. Without Stamina Up on maps like Transit or Origins, or Transit doesn't even have it, never mind. On Origins, you wouldn't even be able to play those maps. Black Ops 4 Stamina Up as well is such a good variation, and so to me, I think Stamina Up has really become an amazing perk over time. Now, PhD Flopper is going to be an interesting one, because I know Treyarch has always thought that this perk has been extremely overpowered. It's only 2,000 points, gives you that explosive immunity, and also lets you flop with an explosive damage, which is amazing on maps like Call of the Dead. Like, the high round strat primarily uses this perk to get through to the top rounds. And to be honest, I think in my old perk list, I don't even think I'd put this in the S tier. It was just in the A tier. And to be honest, I think it still deserves that spot. I don't really find that PhD was as powerful as Treyarch used to say it was. And so that's why, honestly, I've decided to just leave it in the A tier. Now, for Mule Kick, I really think Mule Kick's biggest gripe, with my opinion, in the older games is that it doesn't tell you which gun you have is the 3rd third gun. And anytime you pack a punch, it always cycles between it. And so to be honest, I think the original version of Mule Kick, especially being 4,000 points across all of the other variations of the game, I think it really is the worst variation. And to be honest, I don't even think it deserves B tier. I'm going to put it in the same tier as Double Tap 1.0 in the C tier, because ultimately, I just don't think it's that great. Okay, you know what? I'll put it B tier. I'll put it B tier because I can already hear people going crazy at me. So it's still, like, it's a good perk, but it's just too much money for really what it does. And especially like in the newer games where Mule Kick is a lot cheaper, I feel like that is obviously where it's a lot better. Especially in IW, it's only like 2,000 points, and you're able to actually see which is your third gun, which is amazing. Now, Double Tap 2.0, honestly, I only rated this perk, I believe, in the S tier. But after everything going on with Black Ops 6, and like we haven't seen Double Tap in almost 10 years since Black Ops 3 now, honestly, I think I'm going to put this one in the double S tier. I really miss Double Tap, and it really goes to show how with the new modernized Call of Duty zombie games, we just need this perk back so bad, especially because it would literally double the ammo that you had without you spending double the time of shooting all those bullets. So it is still one of the best perks of all time, in my opinion, and I still actually believe it's better than even Speed Cola and Quick Revive. Now, obviously, if you have Wonder Weapons, Speed Cola is better, but in all honesty, if you grab Double Tap 2.0, it made every single gun that you would pick up better, apart from, like, rocket launchers. So I gotta give it some respect for that at the very least. Now, let's get into the Black Ops 2 perks. So this is going to be Electric Cherry, Tombstone Soda, Who's Who as well, the original version of Vulture Aid, not the new one, and then obviously we could have added Wonder Fizz, but honestly, if I did, I'd probably put it in the B tier. Now, Electric Cherry, I've always felt like was an amazing perk in Mob of the Dead. I feel like when it came into Black Ops 3, it definitely wasn't as strong. It didn't have as much power as it should have, in my opinion. And so ultimately, I just think that Electric Cherry, at least in Black Ops 2, to be quite honest, I put it in the A tier in my last list, and I think I'm still going to keep it there. Because while, yes, I do believe that in Black Ops 3, it's probably like a B tier perk, especially with how powerful Widow's Wine is, I still think it's really one of the best perks that you could run. And honestly, it was one of the best inclusions we've seen in perks in almost 15 years. Like, it is genuinely one of the greatest perks they've ever put out in the game. Now, for Tombstone, oh man, I'm tempted to put this right at the bottom, especially the new variation of Tombstone. It is bad. Like, especially the Cold War variation, in all honesty, I think they're about the same. Like, the Cold War variation is just slightly better because it allows you to potentially keep those perks on solo. But man, I just hope that this perk does not get brought back into Black Ops 6. We have a map called the Tomb, and so a lot of people are thinking Tombstone's coming back. But to be honest, even if it does, I doubt that it would be any good. So ultimately, I think it still belongs in the C tier. The Cold War version is just slightly better, but just not by much. I find that it is just awful after so much. It's really the only perk you never really need to buy in Black Ops Cold War. And as well for Tombstone, like, you have the glitches that you could do in Black Ops 2 to get the 6 perks, which was really cool. But outside of that, yeah, I didn't think it was that great. Now, Who's Who, honestly, with a lot of the Die Rise speedruns I've been seeing, and also the way we kind of fixed it up for the Die Rise remaster, I've definitely liked this perk a lot more. And so, to be quite honest, I'd be tempted to put it in the F tier because it can be so bad, at least for high rounds. But in all honesty, it definitely has more of a usage, I would say, than the C tier perk. So I actually can't believe I'm doing this, but I'm going to put it in the bottom of the B tier. I believe it's actually that good. Like, it can have utilization for the speed run to get the Galva Knuckles, to hop off the map quickly. And so, honestly, speedrunners have definitely changed my mind on this perk. Before, I would definitely have thrown it into the F tier next to Deadshot, but I think it can have a usage. It definitely can have some sort of strategization to it. Now, our last perk for Black Ops 2 that was introduced was Vulture Aid. Now, the original, I hate to say this, but let's bring up also the BO6 version here and just compare the two. I love the BO6 version of Vulture Aid because it fixes a lot of the problems with the point system in BO6. But the issue is they remove so much of the core mechanics of the way it works. And so you have to run specific augments to really match the way that the original Vulture Aid is. And I actually think that the original Vulture Aid is stylized better and honestly works a lot better. Like, I still enjoy the BO6 Vulture Aid, but ultimately I still also believe that the one from Buried is a lot better. And ultimately, I think just because of how much I recognize that the BO6 version is just inferior, I just think I'm going to put the original in S tier because it's made me appreciate the original a lot more. And I don't think that Vulture Aid in BO6 is a bad perk, but I just believe that it doesn't do as much as the original version did. While it's still a cool perk, a machine, and obviously the augments are very powerful for it, I definitely don't think it is as good as the original. And I think I'm going to stick with the A tier on that. And I will, honestly, I'll put it at the top of the A tier. I actually think it's one of the best perks you can get in Black Ops 6. Now, obviously, Black Ops 3 only introduced Widow's Wine, so let's get into this. In my last tier list, I put Widow's Wine at the very top of the game of all of the perks. And ultimately, in a lot of strategies, I do believe that it is actually like sometimes better than the original version of Juggernog. But ultimately, I think just in terms of your usage of it, people will always want to use the original Juggernog a lot more. So I think I'm going to stick with Widow's Wine still in the double S tier. But I don't think I'm honestly going to have it anywhere like beating Jug. I think it's, yes, definitely top 3 perks of all time. But ultimately, you know what's crazy? With the BO4 perks, I actually think Winter's Wail is better than Widow's Wine. It's because of when you have it in the modifier for BO4, it's able to instantly recharge. And that is the biggest thing that it has over Widow's Wine. Widow's Wine, you have to get lucky and hopefully pick up the power-up, whereas Winter's Wail just recharges over time, and it recharges fast. And I think the effect of Winter's Wail is also a lot more stronger than Widow's Wine. Ultimately, I actually think this is the very best perk in all of Black Ops 4 Zombies. So now let's obviously get into the BO4 perks. So we have Bandolier Bandit, Blaze Phase, Bloodwolf Bite, the absolute GOAT, Dying Wish, Ethereal Razor, PhD Slider, Stone Cold, Time Slip, Victorious, and Zombshell. Now, a lot of the other ones are obviously just included with the perks that we've already seen. So let's get into this. Now, Bandolier Bandit, I also think is one of the greatest perks in Black Ops 4 Zombies. And ultimately, in my last tier list, I actually put it in the B tier. But I think I'm going to pop it up to the A tier. I've seen that, like, the biggest thing that makes it an A tier perk is that it gives you extra ammo for the wonder weapons. And that is a huge game changer. That literally is what makes it such a must run. And especially when you have the Helion Salvo strategy, to me, I actually think it's like one of the best perks they've probably ever introduced. You could even argue that it's an S tier perk in a lot of ways, but I think I'm going to stick it with the A tier. And honestly, in a lot of regards, I actually think it's better than OG PhD and Electric Cherry. So I'm going to put it neck and neck with Vulture Aid here. So Blaze Phase is the perk that I think I'm going to put in F tier. Now, I had it in like the C, D tier in my last perk tree, and honestly, I just find that there is literally no usage for this perk. It just, as soon as you crouch, it just slides you forward. It just has no usage. Like, there's no time where I'm ever like, oh, I'm about to die and this is going to save me. Because a lot of the times, even if you use this and you're about to die, you'll literally still die. And so ultimately, as I keep playing Call of Duty Zombies, I realize that this, I think, is the worst perk of all time. I just don't see how it has a usage. It takes so long to recharge as well. And ultimately, I just think it's kind of mid, ultimately, at the end of the day. Now, this is a big change here. Bloodwolf Bite. In my last tier list, I put this in the B tier. And ultimately, I actually believe, like with all the glitches, with the way that it's able to get you ammo on maps like Ancient Evil and a lot of Black Ops 4, I've got to say that Bloodwolf Bite, I think, is going to be in the A tier. And I'm going to put it just behind Bandolier Bandit because it practically does the same thing. But Bandolier, like, obviously, you get into Luna Wolf and that helps you out a lot. And it's an amazing perk. It really does do a lot of justice. And Obviously, if it wasn't for the glitches, I think I would still stick it in B tier. I'd stick it probably up in the top here. But I believe it's still like neck and neck with all three of these perks, because all three of these perks basically give you ammo. But I would say like Vulture Aid, the original, just with like the invulnerability gas, and I know you can still get it with this one, but it allows you to take away other good augments when you stick like the original version of this. So I don't know. I don't think it's that great. Now, Dying Wish, this I believe is also an S tier perk. I believe this is probably just behind Speed Cola. It's literally what the pseudo Juggernog in Black Ops 4 was. You could basically be invincible for about 15 seconds. My only issue as to why it's not SS tier with Winter's Wail is that it just takes like 15 minutes to recharge. While yes, it's an amazing perk, it just has a lot of setbacks and it's very overpowered, but in a way it is balanced in that regard. So I'm fine with that. Now, Ethereal Razor is one I kind of wanted to talk about because I wanted to pair this one up with Melee Macchiato, because you can argue both of the perks are very similar. Now, what's interesting is that I actually believe Ethereal Razor is better than Melee Macchiato. And the reason why is because Ethereal Razor allows you to take out multiple enemies. And it wasn't until like a recent patch with the swords on Citadel Day More for Black Ops 6 where you were able to take out multiple enemies. And I just feel like Melee Macchiato, while yes, it can be beneficial in Black Ops 6, they should have just brought back Ethereal Razor. You know, it doesn't make sense that they put in Death Perception, for example, right? But then it just doesn't, I don't know, it just doesn't feel as good as, let's say, Ethereal Razor between Melee Macchiato. So I think people are going to be shocked where I put this. I think I'm going to put Ethereal Razor at the top of B tier, and I'm going to leave Melee Macchiato, I think, at the bottom of B tier. While I still think Melee Macchiato is an amazing perk, a lot of the times it's useless. And honestly, you know what? I think I'm going to put it top of C tier because there's a lot of runs on BO6 where I just never run the perk. You know, like if you know that you're just going to be using wonder weapons and all that, it's no real use. And it's kind of a shame because in Black Ops 6, you get a dedicated melee weapon. And I kind of find that, like, especially with the points, the way that they're divided, you don't get more points with a melee kill anymore as opposed to a headshot. So there's really less incentivization to use this perk. Now, PhD Slider, honestly, this perk when it came out to Black Ops 4 was absolute garbage. But to be quite honest, I think I'm probably going to stick it into the A tier right next to Flopper. While I do think Flopper is better, it is still an amazing perk that you want to run for strategies like Helion Salvo. And so it's almost a must-run perk, and that's why I believe it's an A tier perk. It literally has the best ability to completely cancel all explosive damage. Nobody really uses it for the slide effect. It's mainly just for the invulnerability. Now, Stone Cold Stronghold is another perk that I find, I remember Jason Liddell was hyping this perk up, and to be honest, wasn't really that great. I kind of find that this perk is very situational, and even for camping strategies, it doesn't really help you out a lot. It gives you a little bit of armor when you stand in a circle, and it creates a circle around you. And ultimately, I actually do believe that it does have more of a practical use than Melee Macchiato, because there are a lot more times, I feel like, where I was running Stone Cold Stronghold, but I don't think it's anything higher than even, like, Who's Who. To be honest, like, the speed runs that you see with Who's Who is probably better. So I think I'm going to leave it at the bottom of the B tier here. So I think that's a fair spot. Now for Time Slip, I've realized, especially with Black Ops 3 customs, where a lot of people have been building Time Slip into original Speed Cola, it's one of the best perks of all time. It basically allows you to use a lot of machines quickly, like the Pack-a-Punch or Gobblegum or whatever. Time Slip is an amazing perk, and honestly, I think it's an S tier perk. I think I'm going to put it right behind Quick Revive. It is literally one of the greatest perks you want for speeding up traps, speeding up everything. Like, that's why I think Speed Cola is also an S tier perk, because just putting speed above everything in Call of Duty Zombies is so important. That is also why I've decided this year to put Stamina Up literally in the SS tier. It is that amazing. And so let's get on to our final three Call of Duty Black Ops 4 zombie perks. This is Victorious Tortoise, Zombie Shell, and Death Perception. Now, let's start with Death Perception. Before, I would have placed this in the F tier. The original I always thought was so bad, but I do see a lot more people running this in Black Ops 4 speedruns, and it's to find the zombies and to actually end the round. And so ultimately, I do believe it's better than an F tier, and I actually do believe it's better than OG Tombstone, but is it better than these three? I don't really think so. It's very situational, and so I think I'm going to put it just above the original version of Tombstone. It's an amazing perk, but again, very situational, and ultimately, like most people, most casual players that are just playing COD Zombies will ultimately never run it, but I would consider the C tier just for usage in terms of some situations, you know what I'm saying? So Zombie Shell, let's talk about this one. I actually like this perk, especially on BO3 Customs. It basically spawns in an orb that slows down the zombies. Now, while I don't think it's probably an A tier perk, I do believe it is a B tier perk. Honestly, I think I'm going to put Who's Who just behind this. I think that's fair. And honestly, I think I'm going to put Zombie Shell probably above... No, I'll put it behind Original Mule Kick. I think that's a fair spot because... Again, it's also situational, but I do believe it's better than pretty much every perk you have in C tier and F tier. It's obviously for certain strategies, and I think, like, while it was a cool perk, I kind of wish it was just built into an augment of, like, another perk, let's say in Black Ops 6 or whatever. And lastly, we have Victorious Tortoise. Now, ultimately, Victorious Tortoise is one of the best perks in my honest opinion. It is so goated, and to be quite honest, I'm tempted in putting it into the S tier, but to be honest, it also is something that casuals don't really run. It basically makes you fully invulnerable when you're holding out your shield, and so ultimately, I think I'm going to put it at the top of A tier. I really think that OG Vulture Aid had more usage and utilization than Victorious Tortoise, but they're almost neck and neck. It really just depends. Like, if the map doesn't have a shield, it's absolutely pointless, and that's why I think it deserves to be A, because if the map doesn't have a shield, then this perk is literally useless. There's no point in ever running this perk. Now, let's go into all of the Cold War perks. I'm not putting them all in F tier, but obviously, let's talk about them since we've already covered the Black Ops 6 perks. Now, for the original Deadshot Daiquiri, obviously we know it's an F tier perk, and it was absolutely garbage, but I do believe the Cold War Deadshot is incredible, and even the BO4 version of Deadshot, I think, goes right up here. It is literally what makes a lot of the headshot camo grinding so much easier in that game, and in a lot of games like Cold War, it's a must run. You literally need it to take out certain bosses with the boss damage and the bullet damage, and so that's why I definitely believe it is really like something that is important to have. So now with the Cold War Death Perception, I also believe that this is better than the BO4 Death Perception, and ultimately, I actually think it's an A tier perk, and I believe I'm going to put it right in between Bloodwolf Bite and Bandolier Bandit, because it basically does the same thing except just for salvage. And in Cold War, salvage is a very important aspect for your whole run, and usually I see a lot of people grab Death Perception first because of the increased salvage rates. And so honestly, I actually believe that it is an A tier perk. Now let's talk about Elemental Pop. I think Elemental Pop in Cold War and BO6 pretty much function the same, give or take obviously a couple of augments, but I believe Elemental Pop, honestly, after I've seen it over time, in a lot of high round runs, you basically need it to help you with the ammo, and so I'm actually tempted to put it at the bottom of S tier. I know in my last tier list, I put it in A tier, but over time, I've realized that it is a very important perk to run for high round runs. Like, it is something that you definitely don't want to miss out on. And while, yes, you're not obviously going to be grabbing the perk first, I would say if you're going for any high round run or even an Easter egg where you want to focus on taking out a lot of the zombies around you, it's a very important perk to have. Like, arguably, it is one of the best perks they've added in recent years. So let's get now obviously into the Cold War version of Juggernog. I do believe this version is obviously not as good as the original because Cold War Quicker Vibe gives you a lot more health regeneration than Cold War Juggernog. And while I do believe Cold War Juggernog is good, I don't believe it is even as good as Victorious Tortoise. Like, Victorious Tortoise does so much more for you, and so I think I'm going to put it even behind, maybe even behind Deadshot. I think I'll put it neck and neck. I'll put it just above Deadshot Daiquiri for the Cold War version, just because I believe Victorious Tortoise is really one of the best BO4 perks, and Cold War Jug was a major downgrade. You know, I would say that if we were ranking BO6 Jug, you get 350 health, and so that would definitely place it up into the S tier, but I think this variation is still probably going to be in the A tier. Now, Mule Kick in Cold War, I actually believe this deserves to still be in the SS tier. I put this in the SS tier in my last tier list, and the reason why is it's not even because of what the perk advertises with the 3 guns, it's just because of how much ammo that you get from this perk in Cold War. And it's going to be interesting to see if this perk gets added into Black Ops 6, if that ammo drop situation is going to be added into it, because I know Vulture Aid has ammo, but we're going to have to see if the Cold War Mule Kick is as good as the BO6 Mule Kick, but I think it's actually going to be better. And in all honesty, I think this is an SS tier perk, but I will still put it at the very bottom because, again, it's not going to be the first perk that you grab, whereas all of these perks in a lot of different situations are definitely going to be the first perks that you grab. Now, let's also get into an amazing upgrade from Cold War, which is the Cold War Quick Revive, and also even BO6 Quick Revive is absolutely amazing. I just think that the augments on BO6 Quick Revive aren't necessarily the greatest. Like the augments, for example, on BO6 Stamina Up, where they allow you to run super fast. To me, like, honestly, let's just put it up here. Cold War Stamina Up is also just amazing. And honestly, if I were rating Cold War PhD, I think that would even be SS tier as well, just because it is so strong in terms of your movement. Like, the movement is what just gets you so far with that. But honestly, I think with Cold War Quick Revive, I would argue it's literally neck and neck with Stamina Up, but ultimately, I just think Stamina Up for speedrunners is literally the perk. It is so unbelievably powerful because you don't even need anything, but if you have Stamina Up, you can continuously get those speedrun world records. And ladies and gentlemen, our last perk is Speed Cola for Cold War, and obviously also for BO6. And honestly, I think in Cold War, it definitely wasn't as good as the original Speed Cola, so I'd probably put it back here. But in my last tier list, I put it in the B tier, honestly, because I just found that obviously it doesn't give you as much reload percentage. But with Black Ops 6 and the augments, they fixed this, and that was something that I was so happy about to see. And so ultimately, for BO6 and also for Cold War, I think Speed Cola is just going to go above original Vulture Aid. I think that's where it actually goes. I think it's definitely gotten a big buff over time, and it definitely deserves still to be in the S tier. Speed Cola has always been one of the greatest perks, and it's obviously a perk that you always are going to want. But ladies and gentlemen, that is my Call of Duty perk list from World at War to BO6. Let me know what you guys think about the changes that have happened over the years. Obviously, the augment system has changed so much about how these perks works, but I'll see y'all, ladies and gentlemen, in that next one.